I just forgot what podcast we were doing. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome
to
It Bears Repeating,
And a Do.
your pop culture expansion pack. I'm Tom.
I'm Tiffany.
Today is a big day. It's the biggest of days here at It Bears Repeating.
Easily. I'm so excited.
Where are we going? What's happening?
We're going to discuss the New York Times presents Framing Britney Spears.
Off the top, interesting title for this.
It is interesting.
Why is it saying Framing Britney Spears?
I think that it has a couple implications. Framing meaning establishing
A case?
how,
Okay.
how perhaps society mistreated Britney Spears. Framing how the people in Camp Britney are framing Britney Spears in order for a means to an end is kind of the way that I interpreted it.
Mhm.
So,
Hi YouTube. We're back. So this has been a long time coming. Tiffany's been a big Britney Spears fan.
in case you don't know.
In case you know. I also like Britney Spears, but I'm not in the stan culture. So I'm not gonna say I'm not coming at this any less biased, but I'm not as in it, I would say. So we're gonna run through this kind of bit by bit, break it down where we feel it's necessary. But we're also gonna focus more on the conservatorship as opposed to Britney. They talk about Britney's rise to fame, which I think is...
We're going to end up talking about it anyway in our Britney series, so some of this is not necessary. I'm going to more maybe fill in some holes in the documentary as well, maybe some things that they mentioned in passing but did not expand upon. And then I do also want to talk about what's happened since the documentary dropped, because it just so happens that
Something happened yesterday.
Literally the documentary came down and a few things have happened since.
But not as a direct result of the documentary.
Well, one thing, yes. The other thing was it just so happens that the documentary was released pretty much the week that Britney had another court hearing pertaining directly to the conservatorship.
Do you think that was a move on the New York Times?
I think that it could have been, yes.
Okay, interesting.
So, interestingly enough, there's also a rumor going around that there is another documentary floating around.
Floating around, it's done and just needs to be...
It's being heavily worked on and has been worked on since 2020. So, I... Just to put this out here, this is all vetted as much as it can be through anonymous internet messaging on Instagram. If you're not familiar, there's an account called Deuxmoi, Deuxmoi, and they post basically anonymous DMs and tips and celebrity sightings. It's just all through this Instagram account. They don't post names or whatever. But anything Britney related, I've been taking screenshots, obvi, as to why. So this was one of the screenshots that was actually posted today when I was waiting for you.
Oh, cool.
I'm very close to someone who was working on litigation about a free Britney doc that was supposed to be on Netflix. They were having difficulty getting it out because of Britney's camp, aka dad. My guess is that Netflix isn't happy Hulu released something before them. It also makes me think that the free Britney doc must have much more sensitive information in it than Framing Britney. The person who runs the account asks, so her own doc is a real thing? And the reason why is... right after the documentary release, somebody started the rumor, or the rumor arose just from the internet that Britney is working on a documentary.
Oh.
Which is curious. I don't know that that's possible, but that was the rumor. So I will say back in 2008.
I was just thinking about.
How would that work?
Yeah.
So back in 2008, Britney Spears did say in the interview called On the Record for Circus that she would hope to write a book one day. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, but I feel right now it is. How likely could that be? And that if it did release, how honest would it be?
Right, because you mean like from Britney's conservatorship, this documentary, or like coming from Britney?
So
the
it was
source?
that coming from Britney.
Okay.
And it's just, I don't believe that.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Queen to have been running
Britney
around
finds a way.
with her iPhone. It's gonna be vertical. It's not gonna be. It's not gonna be. In
Don't even get me started on
I'm not
that.
even being rude. I like literally
No,
think
you're
that's
not
how
wrong.
It's gonna
That's
be
what I mean.
presented.
Okay, so let me
And
finish.
it's gonna start with her just walking into the frame, going like this, and then walking out of frame, and then coming back and doing the same thing. Honestly, iconic.
It is truly iconic behavior. Still wasn't made by her. A Netflix produced one that I heard about in early 2020. They were battling trying to release it last summer. So,
I mean, that's whenever it kind of hit its peak, right?
correct.
Last
So
summer.
no one's really sure where the creation of the rumor for the other one came. But I think it's interesting that we're now hearing like other little smatterings. There's been a lot of personal anecdotes of people who have come in contact with Britney that have been like submitting stuff, because there's like a literal submission form, and you can write that you wish to be anonymous and like give some additional information, and like people have been commenting about
That is like the one
her.
frustrating part of this, is that no one can really be.
Nope, no one knows. No one really knows anything. We only know so much of it, and only up to a certain point. That's what makes this so interesting. So go ahead.
So the thing is, if the conservatorship were to ever try to bounce back with anything, it's never going to make them look good, because basically what they have to prove to us as a culture is that like Britney is incompetent. And do you really want to do that?
Incompetent enough to not be able to handle her own
doings.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you'll see is, even in just discussing this documentary and some of the examples that they cite, when we break down Britney, there is nothing but the desire for control that Britney has shown through her work and also in her professional decisions over time.
I believe it.
So it's quite fascinating that I think her brother, in that same interview that they showed during the doc, said something like Britney couldn't even pay like her restaurant bill if left to her own devices or whatever. And it's like, well, that's curious, because she recorded a whole album in 2016 and carefully curated what songs were going to be on it, and like co-wrote songs and this, that, and the third, and was like very discerning and hands-on. Like, I guess I could understand it, but I also don't.
Right. No, I don't know. There's a lot to be unpacked. So we're going to run bit by bit through this documentary. I apologize if you're watching on YouTube. I'm going to be looking over my shoulder a lot. That's where my notes are. So it's just going to be different.
This is where we're at.
Yeah. We're having a series of days.
Yeah. Oh, God. A personal and professional disaster, one right after the other for me lately.
So we open the podcast. We open the podcast. We open the documentary. We're in front of a courthouse. It's 2020. People are wearing masks. It's really only the reason I can tell. So that's the time for which we're at. We're outside of a courthouse, kind of like setting the scene from where we're going to end. We're starting at the end, essentially. We talk to people who are on the Free Britney. I love that there's like a Free Britney board of executives. I mean, like
there is seemingly.
It does seem like that. This is how they were presented. They had like 3 spokespeople. For them.
Definitely the 2 people from Britney's Graham, and then other various organizers.
And I remember when they started that Instagram, because I used to listen to their podcast Lady to Lady, which they're also on, and they were joking about like, we should start a podcast just talking about Britney's Instagram, because they would talk about it all the time on Lady to Lady, and then they did, and then I did not follow them into that venture, but I thought that was interesting. That it's just interesting to hear, like, when you're not involved, but something you know or are aware of comes into play. You're like, oh, I know you 2 people.
Yeah.
So this is something that I asked Tiffany to see if she had anything to elaborate on. There's a series of videos at the very beginning where people are like, "Dear Britney," and then they like introduce themselves, and like then they tell them what Britney did for them. Do you did you find anything more on that?
No.
Okay. I just assumed
I think it was like some sort of trend on TikTok or Instagram stories.
it is interesting to see young TikTokers.
And if
talking
I'm
about
wrong,
this.
like correct me. It is because there is a contingency of very young people. And when I say that, I mean people like considerably younger than me, because I was like the generation that came of age as Britney did, for lack of a better way to put it. We were the target audience for when Britney became popular. So the fact that it's like people in that age range, young Gen Zers, whatever, that are like super into it too, is so interesting. But I love it.
I think
Obviously,
that'll be interesting to like expand upon when we're talking about Britney longer form, because I have theories.
I love that.
Okay. They define conservator for us, which is a person, official, or institution designated to take over and protect the interests of an incompetent. I maybe didn't write the rest of that out. There might be
It's
more
fine.
words that you get the gist. I have never heard of this before. Britney. Like, I know what a power of attorney is, but that's just from like jobs I've had. I've had to like know what that is. But this seems like a very specific situation.
It is. They touched on it in the doc. It's usually for people that are super old or become very sick.
But that's also what a power of attorney does.
Correct. This is like a step further than that.
Okay.
And then every state has its own legislation and rules as
For
far as
conservatorship?
yes.
Okay.
So California's conservatorship is specific to like by the bylines of Californian law.
Okay.
But as they also stated in the documentary, usually full-grown adults are not under a conservatorship unless if it's like a pretty dire circumstance. And I think it's important to note up top that there's potential that Britney like needed this as a temporary measure at one point or another.
Correct?
It did, but it was quickly renewed.
So we meet Liz, who is an editor at the New York Times. She like lays down a few facts for us, introduces us to what we're essentially watching, because I think that people on the internet like know of this, but like my friend Etta, who is not of the internet like we are, she doesn't know about this.
It's interesting because a contingency of the internet knew about this. If you listen to podcasts and you liked pop culture podcasts, you may have been more aware of the Free Britney movement when it came about, because it literally broke with Britney's Graham podcast. However, I think culture at large, really their only true understanding of Britney Spears was through her Instagram. And sort of the eccentricities and nuances found there. And perhaps no one really understood that she was still living under the conservatorship. Or if they knew, they did not understand the extent of it.
I mean, I think that was me whenever it first broke.
Right. And I also think that's where framing Britney comes from too, is literally providing context for this and perhaps giving it a new, fresh set of eyes through a 2021 lens. You know, this is how she was treated versus what this really means on a global level now, looking back with some sort of moral compass.
So to break it down, this is what Liz introduces. So Britney's been in conservatorship for 12 going on 13 years. In the doc, Jamie, her father, is the main conservator. There was another guy who had a weird last
Andrew
name.
Wallet.
I thought that was the irony.
Like very ironic.
And then we eventually get the bank involved.
Correct.
Later.
And there have been people that have shuffled in and out of positions of power. There is an ex of Britney's, and I cannot remember his name right now, but they dated in like 2011, and they may have even been engaged. I cannot fucking remember his name off the top of my head. But that fucking guy ended up a conservator. But the general vibe now looking back and some of the events from that period, which was not included at all in the documentary, that this guy was very much in the pocket of Jamie. So I look forward to looking further into that specifically. So there have been other conservators in the past, but Jamie has been involved from its inception and also like a key power figure. Bless you.
Ma'am, what are you doing?
Attention.
She's never been this needy when we recorded in the past.
No, for sure.
So I don't know what your deal is today. Don't climb on my lap. I love you, but it's not the time.
Literal dog boogers all over my phone.
So we're at a standstill. Britney does not want Jamie to be the conservator. Jamie refuses to step down from the conservatorship.
Correct.
We do a flashback to the beginnings of Britney Spears and we meet Felicia, who clearly, to everyone who is a Britney fan, knows about Felicia. But I was delighted to see this, like, in my personal opinion, Felicia is like the closest thing we have to an insider who appears in this documentary.
Definitely. And it's a huge deal that she was involved because obviously Fee has always been Team Britney from the start.
Yes.
They established that in the doc, which I thought was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, as soon as I saw her, I like got tears in my eyes because I was like, oh my God. It just lent a lot of validity to what was being said. And also further gave weight to the movement and what it's attempting to accomplish because Fee's there. Fee knew what she was signing up for. So if you know what you're signing up for and you're someone who's so close to Britney, then that's in and of itself some sort of confirmation that there is a fucking problem.
Also, Felicia was like, this girl knows what she's doing. Like
there's never been
Britney.
any doubt. She is the teacher in the Baby One More Time video.
Oh,
just as a fun fact. Yeah.
That's a fun fact. And this was like the line that got me the most. She's like, I just want people to remember why we love Britney. And I was just like, that is truly beautiful.
I could not watch this more than once. I mean, I'm already just in a delicate emotional state, but I like literally was crying through whole sections of this documentary. And granted, I had a very long day the day that I watched it too, but it is like so emotional after a certain point and like weirdly reliving, like watching a lot of the difficulties and events of 2007.
So fast.
It takes a fucking sharp turn.
Yeah.
And like seeing the footage and stuff again, I was like, oh my God, like I remember like keeping up with this.
That's not a story for this podcast.
Okay.
It's like I have something to tell you, but it's not for this one. I love how Felicia's just like Fee. Is that what we're calling her? Fee? Is that the shorthand?
That's like
okay. I like how she was just like, I don't know what a conservatorship is, and I was just like, why am I amazed by you? I loved her showing the excess of Britney memorabilia that just eats her house. There is not a wall surface that is not covered with a placard. And it's like, this is when she went 11 times platinum. Like, it wasn't like she didn't get the first one. She got like the 11th one. But like, and I love how she was like, Lynn came over to help me decorate. And I was like, Lynn, you need to reel it in.
What I appreciated out of all this beginning sequence is they give you a really good feeling of the kind of people Britney comes from and like something foundational in that, because as somebody who's like a huge fan, I'm aware that these are her roots and how that like colors some of the things that maybe she still does now, or some of the things that you would find very strange. So like some people always comment that when Britney really likes a top, she'll wear it 12,000 times. And that's true.
Right.
But there's a reason why. Like, for her, the clothes are still like a very exciting thing. And when she finds something she feels good in, you get the impression that she like really treasures it. And it's because she was like
small time.
Yeah, like she's around these people who were very humble and like appreciative of what they had.
Also, people clapping at that, it's just like, you're a real person who has to wear the same clothes over and over again. Do you have a different outfit for every time you post on Instagram?
Well, and
'Cause I sure
Britney's
don't.
not someone who puts on airs like that. She never ever has been. So in interviews and stuff, like, she talks like a normal person. She doesn't try to appear to be. There's no Instagram influencer vibe about anything Britney does. And it's because
No.
part of her is still very much this person that we see at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so they show Britney on Star Search. And Britney is singing like octaves lower than we've ever heard Britney Spears sing. And when I think I watched it after you had watched it. And I texted Tiffany, was like, what does Britney Spears actually sound like? Because I don't know that I know. Because I know that Jessica Simpson said in her book that Britney was the best singer out of all of them. Jessica Simpson, who, say what you will about her, very talented singer. And like, if you would have asked me who was the more talented singer, I would have probably guessed Jessica Simpson or maybe Christina Aguilera. But Christina Aguilera is a show off. That's the only reason we know all of these things.
She is. I mean, love that girl, but girl. All right. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because there's a lot of folklore and speculation as to why things turned out that way. So I actually have a quote. I'm pulling from what I'm ultimately going to be discussing, like in my first part of the whole Britney saga we're going to go through. I have some quotes from an A&R executive from Jive.
Okay, and that was her first record company.
Correct. So this is in reference to when she was auditioning for Jive. Britney was trying to sing like Toni Braxton, which was way too low for her. It sounded pretty awful in places, Steve Lunt, an A&R executive for Jive, said. But when her voice went up high, you could hear the girlish quality, and there was something really appealing in that. First of all, that's gross. Second of all,
It's gross.
it's really gross. So, second of all, one of the running theories is that they encouraged her to sing in a higher octave. It kind of encouraged her to do, I don't want to say a baby voice, but like Ariana Grande effect.
Wow. Yeah. When really it's probably somewhere in between. It's like her
It
sweet
is
spot.
likely
Yeah.
somewhere in between.
Because there was in the 90s, like it was diva or nothing. It seemed, unless you were the Spice Girls. If you were a female vocalist, you had to be as good as Celine Dion, or like people would ignore you. We have come much farther to appreciate different kinds of stylings 20 years later. So I can understand, like, because I feel like all of us wanted to do that, like when we sang, there was like that growl that everyone wanted to have.
And it's interesting because if you listen to Britney's first album, there are some tracks where she be singing. And I have a plethora, many clips of her singing through like the first album into Oops, I Did It Again, even into Britney. And I'm not saying anything revelatory here, but after a certain point, seems like Britney's mostly lip syncing. And there's a whole other mess of speculation as to why that is as well. But it's always noted, and this is always, I've seen the Star Search clip 12 million times. It just like has been referenced or used in other things I've seen. I never saw the clip of McMahon or whatever that man is
Right there.
interviewing her, which was disgusting. But it's always noted how deep her tone is because she's literally like, Britney is 7 or something.
Yeah. Singing
She's tiny.
so low.
So low.
Yeah. Ew. I love how Britney's response is just like, ew. Like from 7, she's just like, boys are
She's
gross.
like, let me skirt this because Sir, I'm an actual baby. Like, what are you talking
Men
about?
are bad or dead. Men are bad. It's just what I'm chanting in my head at any given time. Also, like, I fully forgot that Star Search was ever a thing, and then also was a thing again
Destiny's
later.
Child was on it. An iteration of.
I think they were on that iteration. The second iteration was like,
I meant iteration of Destiny's Child. I don't think it was like
Oh, it wasn't-
fully formed Destiny's Child, but it was like Beyonce and some other people.
they were called Girls Time or something.
Yes.
Like that. Yeah.
Yes.
So the documentary really breezes through the rise of Britney Spears. We start with the Mickey Mouse Club, which they like don't dabble in at all very long. She played basketball in high school. I made sure that I wrote that down because I love the photo of her holding the basketball. It makes me so happy.
And another quote from that time was that's when Britney realized she was in love with music and wanted to go for continuing to pursue it.
Because after the Mickey Mouse Club ended.
Correct. But it was sort of like they didn't know what to do next because it's not like her parents had any type of insight into the business.
Mm-hmm.
They did what they had to do to get her in front of the right people to get her on Mickey Mouse Club. But then once that was over, it was hard for them to find a direction. Also, it should be noted, and they like say this in the documentary, but maybe not expand on it fully, but it's something Jessica Simpson also spoke to in her life. Britney's family didn't have a lot of money. And after
they did not really
point,
emphasize that too much in the doc.
They
like
were
said it, but they were
low key depending on Britney to become famous.
Well,
and that is where the
she
quote
was gonna buy Jamie
a boat. Exactly.
I've never wanted to get up and like kick my TV screen so much.
That
in a
man,
moment.
repulsive.
Jamie wasn't around a lot when she was. This is just from what I gathered from the documentary. Wasn't around a lot. Struggled with alcoholism. Jumped from job to job. There was like no stability. But Lynn seemed to be in it for the long haul.
Hilarious because literally Jessica Simpson's dad did the same exact thing. Like to a T. Like would do bad business deals, start shitty companies that would go nowhere. Essentially, Jamie did the same shit. And but did they say Jamie had substance abuse issues?
They said alcohol.
Yeah.
Alcoholism.
So same, literally the same shit.
But Jessica Simpson can talk about it. That's
Britney
like
cannot.
the one difference. And she can speak to it. The woman who says the boat quote, you can tell she like wants to spit as she's saying it. She is not having it. And she was like, that's all I'm going to say about Jamie.
Period.
Okay. They briefly discuss mall tours, which I can't wait to get in with you.
I'm excited to talk about it.
And they spend a lot of time focusing on great things. They show how humble Britney is. She took out $10,000 to give people in her hometown $100 bills.
I did not know that. And why would I? That was something specific that Fee shared.
And it was just Merry Christmas. Not I'm Britney Spears giving you
literally started crying.
Of course, yes. So they show the transition here is they show Britney talking about, I know what's going on with my job. I know all the deals. I know what I want to do. I know where I want to go. Essentially, I'm just like paraphrasing, but we get a series of different interviews where it's like Britney is very up on what is happening with her career. Am I wrong? And you're going to expand on that.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about it.
And then they like rise of Britney Spears. Now we talk about where things start
what happens next.
Sketchy. So talking about like tabloids and like all of this stuff is just, I guess I didn't realize how triggering it was because I don't pay attention to it anymore because I have the option to not. But
it's still a thing.
It is. And I know that.
It's not nearly as pervasive, but like if I were to go to Google right now and type in Britney Spears 2021, you'd be able to find pap photos of her. Though, another thing that's come out recently is she has been under lock and fucking key. She took a walk with a friend on a beach. According to anonymous internet sources again, but she took a walk on the beach with a friend, and everybody freaked out because I guess Britney did not like clear it or let enough people know where she was going. And since then, she's mostly just been in her house.
Sorry, I'm catching myself.
I know, I derailed you. So I had followed Perez Hilton and like the delisted.
That's what we were talking about.
When I was like around this time.
But I'm even talking about at the grocery store, Entertainment Tonight. Like, we didn't have. It is so. Because I don't think about things. You're not thinking about these things consistently in your life. How different things were.
Well, and all of that fell out of
5 to 10 years ago.
It all fell out of vogue too. So I mean, why would you like have a big opinion of it?
I don't know when, like, the millennial generation kind of took over, and we were like, empathy.
Yeah, like this is not it.
Yeah, because it had to have happened at some point. Because we clearly have changed the conversation. Because this is not. The way we talk now is not the way we talked.
It's not the way we talked about mental health.
No.
Around this time. Even when Amanda Bynes went through all of her difficulty and is still going through that difficulty.
Yeah.
But I believe, I'm going to reference her briefly in the year 2014. So, like, even then, we weren't where we're at now. So it's easy to forget.
Yeah. The gross part of this is that, like, I feel like this was very queer culture of the time.
It was.
And
delisted and Perez Hilton were run by 2 gay men.
So the public is saying that she's too sexy to be a role model for kids, but plays too innocent to be sexy. Like, there's some... It's just like what we talk about Kate. You can't be 2 things.
No.
You can't. You have to be one thing.
How dare she contain multitudes?
How dare anyone?
Truly. And it was interesting because you get the vibe as years go on and Britney experiences sex and like comes into being a woman. She's like a very sexual person. She just is.
Yeah.
She's a physical person. I don't think I'm making huge unreasonable assumptions about her character. These are things that you see, like why she's such a dedicated dancer. She like movement. She's into that a lot. So that plays into sex. However, you get the impression that no one taught her anything about the nuances of it. And I almost think that some of this was not on her. So, for example, the concept of the Baby One More Time video was literally Britney's idea because they wanted her to do something different. And she was like, I want to have a good time. I want to wear a cute skirt and I want to dance. We should be in a school. I should be with all my friends. And we should be like going down the hallways and like dancing in the gym and like whatever, doing her thing. And I do believe, in the documentary made a good point about this, teenagers are inherently sexual because you're starting to gravitate towards the things you don't understand.
And hormones.
So Britney wasn't doing anything wrong by exploring these things. Where I believe something wrong happened was that no one was guiding her through any of it. So I really do believe that she did not understand that some of the things she was doing were so sexual. I think she was like kind of oblivious through it.
But I don't even think the Baby One More Time video is that sexy.
I mean, it's definitely not by today's fucking standards, but at the time it was such a big deal. Like,
well, I remember everyone just like doing that with their shirts.
Oh, how dare she like have the fuzzy little things in her hair and be wearing like a schoolgirl outfit? I mean, meanwhile, schoolgirl outfits were fetishized long before Britney Spears came around and wore one.
Yeah, like Clueless had already happened.
If anything, why are we holding a child, because she was still under 18 at this time, holding a child accountable in this way as opposed to holding the responsibility as the viewer as to projecting sexuality onto something, because that's ultimately what it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100% what it
She's
is,
not
yeah.
showing her titties.
No.
There's not even an ungodly amount of like navel showing. And even if there is, again, that is what teenagers do. So if you're
Yeah.
turning it into this big, massive sexual movement and
that onus is not on Britney.
no. That is what society is doing.
I do love, I don't know, I think she's when she's talking to Diane, she's like, well, I'm not your children's babysitter.
Which is so funny because
Yeah.
Josh and I were watching this together, obviously. And he was like, the words were coming out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, but wait a minute, what about? And Brittany literally like finished the thought. And that was like a big fucking deal at the time. People were like, excuse me, like, what do you mean? They even tried this shit with Rihanna. And Rihanna was like, I didn't fucking ask to be anybody's fucking role model. That's not my aim in this life.
I think there is a little bit more of a nuanced conversation about that grand scheme, which it's not what we're talking about
right,
here.
because race doesn't come into
Um,
what I'm referring here specifically, but that is
But also,
also
like,
a huge thing.
I mean, like the first person I think of who uses quotes like this incorrectly is RuPaul, who wants to take no responsibility for the stuff that he says.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, I'm not your spirit guide. And I was like, your whole thing is you try to give us colloquialisms to spit out about our mental health and about our well-being.
Well,
and then you're not going to take responsibility for what that might do to people.
She's
I
like
don't-
very quick to also make herself a queer icon and lean into that because she was like the world's most famous drag queen or
right, but that's what
whatever.
I'm saying. Like sometimes that quote,
But
I
also
think gets
doesn't
missed.
want to doesn't want to take any responsibility
Right.
for any of the shitty shit that she says. But at this time, Britney wasn't saying shitty shit. She was
No.
doing things people didn't like.
Yeah. So then the documentary parallels this with with the Bill Clinton scandal, because I'm not going to call it the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
No, which
any
I had
longer.
never ever thought about. But it is true. That's
I,
a
as
great point.
As an 8-year-old, didn't even know. I don't think I knew about what was going on with the president.
But what's
But
curious,
I did know what's going on with Britney Spears.
Period.
At 8.
So I will say, and I feel like this is pervasive throughout the documentary, but maybe isn't like out and out said in this way. When Britney starts to show flaws, real cracks in the veneer, people are so quick to jump on her because they're looking for it. 1. And 2, when things got very bad and they attacked her so much, it almost felt as though it was justified and deserved. You didn't do what you were supposed to. You were wrong because of this, and this. So fuck you, you deserve this. Like, you're doing stuff wrong, you deserve this.
The misogyny.
Truly, but you deserve this because you didn't live up to our expectations. In 2 different ways. Like, you were too sexy, so now I'm going to take you down. Or you didn't fulfill this expectation of being my daughter's, like, whatever, so fuck you. But I think, like, people really did delight in her downfall because Britney has undeniable star quality. She's a magnetic human being.
Mm-hmm.
She's also incredibly beautiful. And even at this time in particular,
I will tell you, you've always referred to her as being so beautiful. And in my head, I'm like, do I think that about Britney Spears? Not even to be rude.
no, it's fine.
But then there were like clips in this where I'm like, oh, she is so beautiful.
There's an ideal in the back of your brain that you didn't know you had, but Britney was fulfilling that. Britney brought out this like homegrown sensibility of just like what a talented woman could look like. And it's like, look how chic and talented and beautiful. And then it was like, look how fucking sexy she is. Ugh. People love to see beautiful things fall apart. They just do. It makes them feel more justified about being a shitty person or their shitty circumstances also.
I also think it's a travesty that women are allowed to be sexual, but then you're talking to the boy bands and you're like, the assumption is they're getting laid left and right. And I don't remember what the woman's name was, but she literally said that she worked with the boy bands. She's like, they never got grilled like Britney did.
Never. Because we expect more from women always.
And that same woman kind of mentions, like, this is when Britney's like, I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want to do.
Because at this point, so Britney was also very taken aback because she did not understand that once she became a certain level of famous, she could not go back. I think she had a very naive view on what this was going to end up looking like.
Not the same, but congruently, I still haven't learned that to this day.
There is it is what it is. And I also believe that fame changed as the internet became more of a presence,
accessible to everyone.
So fame became a much deeper, darker thing. And I think Britney was partially about that, like a part of that sort of growth and change in fame too, because she became such a consumable product. Specifically because she was a woman and of all these things we've talked about so far. So I don't think it was anything she could imagine as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, you know, with the Baby One More Time era, that there would ever be a point where she would become a full-blown adult and not be able to walk down the street.
Right.
Because up until this point, there were celebrities and there's actors that have been evergreen past a certain point. But like when you think of music stars that would get recognized walking down the street no matter what, it's like Madonna.
Right.
There are some people, don't get me wrong, but like Britney became one of those people fast.
It's interesting how like equal parts like dark and light the internet can be. Because the idea is like the internet starts and then there could be just chat rooms upon chat rooms of people just being like, I hate Britney Spears. And like that's all they talk about. And now you have like a platform at which to like share hate.
Correct.
However, is why we are where we are now politically too. So like it all bleeds into other things.
It does. Yeah. And conversely, I mean the Free Britney movement was born because of the fucking internet and has been able to stay organized and disseminate information because of the internet.
Right. This is everything's internet based.
I got laid from the internet. You know what I mean? It's a big deal. It's great. But also shit like this happens. Not great.
Okay. So the documentary does like the briefest of briefest touches on Justin in the documentary. And I was just like, hit. If you're new here, we've often talked about across all of our podcasts about our distaste for what Justin Timberlake.
And this is why.
I mean, this is just the beginning.
And what's so crazy is like they reference it and everything. Well, I'll let you get to it before I like jump into my big diatribe.
So just like they talk about how Justin spun the breakup to like make it negative towards Britney, and then everyone believed Justin because he's a man and misogyny, and everyone took that narrative and ran with it, even women.
I was one of them. I mean, I was a child still, granted, when Justified came out, but Cry Me a River was a bop. Like, I listened to it all the time, and whenever the video dropped and it had the Britney lookalike in it, which is clearly what that's supposed to be, there's no two ways of fucking about it. That's why a lot of the articles were referencing the video using a photo of her wearing a specific hat, because in the music video, they show a model from behind who vaguely resembles Britney. You kind of see her face in profile and other shots of the video, but she has a hat on in the same video. So I remember watching that happen. Them as a couple was so elevated at the time because NSYNC was huge, relating back to boy band land. This was like around the same time they were together. NSYNC was so fucking big. Justin was like starting to pull out and like show himself as the leader. It had also already been kind of established, but like Britney really helped flesh him out as a whole human outside of the collective.
So I think that's gonna have to be like more for
yeah, for sure.
Someone had Cry Me a River's on the second solo album from Justin?
No, it's on the first one.
Okay. Never mind. I thought I had different
So
timeline.
Anyway, what I'm saying is I was a part of it. I was bought and sold it, and it everything really made it sound like Britney did something just so unjustifiable, something so terrible to him. She flagrantly cheated on him after she made a big deal of being a virgin, and that's gross. And he was made out to be this huge victim.
It's not the first time he'll play that role either.
No, it really ain't.
I guess, hold on, but I guess this is the Instagram note apology.
Oh, I have it. I have it on my phone. I have some hot takes about it. So after being featured in the documentary, a couple different hashtags started going around the internet, which was one was something like, I'm sorry, Britney, or simply apologize to Britney.
Mm-hmm.
So people started coming for Justin fast, especially after this. News outlets picked this up and focused on this part of it.
Funny that the news outlets picked this up. As if they weren't 100% the reason that he got away with it in the first place.
110%. But they're driving traffic back to their websites right now, you know, spinning the alternate accurate narrative that Justin said and did terrible things and used his breakup from Britney to springboard his solo album. So I'm going to read this.
This is the apology.
Yes.
I took
and
my
this was
off.
this is a Notes app apology. I just want everybody to know.
Not only that, it's 2 slides.
2 slides.
2 slides. You've
2
wreaked
slides.
havoc for 2 decades.
2 slide apology.
And you're just going to throw Janet.
I've seen the messages, tags, comments, and concerns, and I want to respond. I am deeply sorry for the times in my life where my actions contributed to the problem, where I spoke out of turn or did not speak up for what was right. I understand that I fell short in these moments and in many others, and benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism. I specifically want to apologize to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson, both individually, because I care for and respect these women, and I know I failed. I also feel compelled to respond, in part because everyone involved deserves better, and most importantly, because this is a larger conversation that I wholeheartedly want to be a part of and grow from. Second slide. The industry is flawed. It sets men, especially white men, up for success. It is designed this way. As a man in a privileged position, I have to be vocal about this. Now, because of my ignorance, I didn't recognize it for all that it was while it was happening in my own life, but I do not want to ever benefit from others being pulled down again. I have not been perfect in navigating all of this throughout my career. I know this apology is a first step and doesn't absolve the past. I want to take accountability for my own missteps in all of this, as well as be a part of a world that uplifts and supports. I care deeply about the well-being of the people I love and have loved. I can do better, and I will do better. So my thoughts and feelings, I was immediately repelled. And as it was said by T. Kyle of the It's Britney Bitch podcast, posting a Notes app apology that is most definitely written by someone else is laughably pathetic and extremely insincere, but that's just my opinion. And then Claire Downs on Twitter said, it's weird to group Janet and Britney's apologies together, right? Because what he did in each situation is not the same. Debatably, I mean, what he did to Britney was absolutely horrible, but it was very personal to their situation and their personal relationship. What he did to Janet was less personal, but more despicable, almost, in a sense. And I actually know a lot about this, and I would love to do a mini episode, just like quickly breaking down what happened. Because I found the dirt a long time ago, and it was one of those things that was being passed around when like the article went up in regards to like everything that went down in the intricacies following the Super Bowl performance, where Justin ripped off, you know, Janet's nipple cover. And like the chain of events that led to everything being where Janet basically, her career just disappears. And I feel like no one really talked about it.
There's a very good episode of You're Wrong About where they talk about.
Okay, perfect. Then I don't need to do it. But
I'm just, that's where I learned a lot about it.
Yes. So
because he goes and cries to whatever that guy.
Essentially, there's a guy at CBS or whatever channel the fucking Super Bowl airs on, because it's a big deal when you break certain regulations on TV.
It is.
It costs a lot of money because TV is very regulated, and it's very regulated because at one point we thought TV was the devil. So in America, there are like definitely certain things you cannot be doing on television. Nudity is one of them, very heavily regulated, which is why when you watch something on HBO, you can see all the titties, ass, and cock that you want because you're choosing
More
to
cock,
pay
please.
for that. Truly, Sex and the City showed cock. It was like a huge deal. Anyway,
sparingly.
it's not
Yeah.
on cable television, so it does
Right.
not fall subject to the same regulations. So when Janet was exposed, it was a huge fucking deal, and it became a bunch of other people's problems that this happened because they had to answer to these government agencies as well as pay fines because this happened. So essentially, the guy who was running maybe CBS, whatever, at the time was a fucking nutter butter. He was a real psycho, egotistical nightmare. And he expected to be apologized to, insisted upon it. Justin essentially makes the choice to not stand with Janet and be an ally in this moment because she didn't rip her own titty out. He did. And maybe it was a stunt and it turned on them. Whatever the case may be, either way, what happens is Justin chooses to go to this executive and literally grovel for forgiveness, cries. That was the thing that got me. He literally goes to this man and cries and says how fucking sorry he is and all this shit.
Right. And the discourse at the time was never like the layered racism, like, because not only is Janet a woman, she's a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it hit her like triple hard.
Triple hard.
Yeah. Like
triple hard. And then on top of it, Justin uses his privilege and not to build and protect Janet, which you would think would have been the thing. Leave her alone. It happened. I pulled the thing off. Like, this was us performing together. We had a thing in place. It didn't go off correctly, whatever. Instead, Justin doesn't really say much, as far as I recall, to the press. Goes to this man, cries. He gets to continue to live his solo career fantasy out. Janet angers this man so much by not apologizing because she had nothing to apologize for. Literally, she is blackballed, and that is the word that is used over and over and over again. Her albums released that had been coming up, buried. Her music is pulled from most radio stations. Her music videos don't really appear on any cable network channel that would do such a thing.
mm-hmm.
And that's basically it. We don't hear from Janet Jackson in any real significant way after that.
Until like 2017.
Something like that. And it's still not the same as it was pre-Super Bowl levels. Because the other thing is Janet was thriving in the 80s and 90s. Janet was a movement.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then she managed...
she was the Super Bowl halftime. It was her halftime show.
She managed to have a renaissance in the early 2000s with her solo releases. So it was kind of like a Janet's Back thing. She was a beloved icon. But it was so easy for her to be taken down. And Justin is 110% a part of that. Because there's no way he didn't know what the clapback was. And he did absolutely nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. I shouldn't say one is more despicable than the other, because both of them are disgusting in like their own very nefarious ways. But he's not a good person. He's a bad man. Just last year, was it last year or the year before? He literally was cheating on Jessica Biel in New Orleans, just out in the open.
Oh, I did not hear about
His wife with a small child at home, making out with young actresses, whatever. And then he's like, oh, like it wasn't really what it looked like, and it was for a role, and I was like hammered, whatever. You just think you can do whatever you want because you're Justin Timberlake. It's so gross.
I do want to say, because I like had posted some anti-Justin stuff in my Facebook, my Instagram story, And I did get some like, well, look at the way, because the tabloid that I had like paused it on in the thing, like it just, all you saw was Justin Timberlake's name, and then like it said something really gross about him, and I was like, I'm not sitting here trying to justify that the media isn't gross.
No, the
to
media is
men
disgusting.
too. The media is foul all around.
But again, we've already highlighted
Right.
there is a huge problem with media, and there's a
Yeah.
huge problem with media around
It
celebrities.
doesn't relieve Justin Timberlake of the shit he's done.
No, but they did treat him more favorably
They did.
as a white dude.
So back to Britney. She's in an interview with Miss Diane. What is her name?
Sawyer.
Yeah. And Diane looks Britney in the eye and says, "What did you do?" Just, ooh, what? That's gross. That's gross. Also, in this interview is also lumped in that the governor of, forgot,
Whatever state.
had said that she would shoot Britney, the governor's
And then
wife.
she tells her that and plays a clip for her where that horrid woman is saying that.
And then that's all lumped in the same interview. And of course, Britney's like, ew, gross. I don't want to do this anymore.
And she's crying.
Yeah.
Literally crying. Also, there was something so deeply triggering in that. Being asked in that pointed manner, what did you do? When you know, like, you either didn't really do it or you truly don't understand what you could have done wrong. As someone who's AFAB, I've experienced that so many times where like you cross a societal norm that you didn't know existed, but you are quickly informed. You don't do that. Whether that's like me as a woman or me as a woman in my family, like there's again those unspoken expectations we have of women, but like that specific tone like sent me somewhere dark.
Yeah, it was gross.
It's so bad. It's so bad. I'm so glad that this happened and like we're having these conversations.
I do love that Britney. Okay, so recently, my brother has told me that when I swear, whatever's happening is just an inconvenience to me. But if I scream gross or ew, something very terrible has happened. And I never really associated with it, but like it's true. For Britney to be like ew in an interview is like a big deal. It's a big deal.
Well,
you don't say that.
You know she couldn't like God forbid she cursed.
Right.
Or anything like that. But I also don't see Britney. You know what I mean? She's so sweet. Literally, ew, gross.
But Diane's a cunt, and I'm just gonna leave
Diane's
it
a
at
huge cunt.
So
Matt Laurer's on the shit list too, but he already was because we already know he's a fucking psycho, sadistic, abusive, gross man. But I'm glad that they showed a little bit of his bullshit as well.
that comes up in a second.
Yeah.
So after the Diane situation, Kevin's introduced. They don't really linger on Kevin. I don't know a lot about. I remember thinking that he looked gross, but that's my I don't know how he plays into this specific situation, or if that's like an outlying thing that's not really involved, other than the divorce and the kids. I
think it's important to know a little bit more context going into this.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about it in more detail, obviously. But Britney has always talked about getting married and having a lot of kids. Ever since she was young, that was something she talked about a lot as very important to her. So when she met Kevin, I think there was something in him that felt familiar to her. And I know a lot of people have deemed them trashy or whatever. I'm not here to make a judgment call on like how Britney was raised or the kind of people she was raised around, but I don't feel like it is unreasonable to say that Kevin likely harkens back to like a kind of person Britney was around growing up. So the impression that you're given is that Britney falls very hard for Kevin. And I have some words from Britney specifically, which we will discuss around the 2004 era when Britney meets Kevin and some of the things that she has said in interviews. But it's a very whirlwind romance, and they get married pretty quickly. They also skip over the fact that like Britney is starting to go out and be in the party scene before this even. You see it in the Zone promo, which they kind of skirt past a lot of that. But there's a whole special that was filmed for Britney called like, I think it's called Up All Night or something, where she goes to different gay clubs in New York and basically just performs. Nobody knows that she's going to be there. She like comes through all these back entryways and just shows up and performs Toxic. And Lady Bunny's like at one of the gay clubs and everybody's losing their fucking mind. Is this
available to watch?
Oh yeah, we'll watch it. I've been gathering all my ducks. I also have,
because I was like, I'm very interested in that.
I also have,
I would want to just see the people react to it. Like I just want to see that.
I also have Chaotic with Kevin and Britney, which is their reality show. So she was already like wanting to go out and do adult things as adults want to do.
Yeah.
There was an even bigger push for that from Britney because so much of her was controlled for so long and she participated in that and felt very smothered by that. And again, I don't think this is a huge leap in assumption by saying as much. She says it through and through all of her interviews as her career progresses, the first, second, third album. She's talking about themes of wanting to take control, break free, do her own thing. So as she gets to be like close to drinking age, has a little bit more money, she's trying to go out and have a good time.
Of course.
Who wouldn't? That's a pretty common thing that we see. So that plays into effect into where we end up in 2006, 7, because they sort of slide right to they cut to the chase.
They really do.
But you see that there's an escalation.
They talked to the gross man from Us Weekly who had like the budget to buy photos, and he's gross.
Oh, what a fucking horrendous piece of shit.
Just the way he like delivers his information. He's like, over the course of my time, I got like $8 million is spent.
Oh, I forgot. Okay. I don't know if I mentioned this or not. Britney got married in Vegas, like close-ish to when her and Federline got together. And it was like a huge deal. People were like, went so fucking crazy about it. It was this guy that Britney literally grew up with, and they were all drunk in Vegas, and like everyone lost their shit about it.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. That was another tipping point because
then
they
didn't talk about that one at all.
Because then she got with Kevin, like kind of close to that, and then they end up getting married.
And as I understand, like that was like buried quickly.
Well, they annulled that shit like within the same 24-hour period or 48 hours or something, because her team went fucking ballistic. Because as much as Britney would try to like pull away and do more things, even then they're trying to pull her back in and hold her close because they want her to continue to participate in the cycle, and they want her to continue to fulfill like the fantasy that she is this perfect all-American girl superstar.
Then we meet this paparazzi man,
Sam Lefty.
Well, I'm talking about Daniel Ramos.
Oh, how can I forget the photographer?
So he kind of explains like whenever he first started like taking photos of Britney, she was like whatever about it. Like would kind of just do whatever, and no one else made this correlation except I'm sure humans have, but like with the documentary, I feel like it was such an oversight to say that her relationship with the paparazzi changed as soon as children were involved, as it should and would. She's the as a parent, you want to protect your child. And whenever you are being swarmed by 20 to 30 people at any given time with being in your face, that's your child. A normal child doesn't go through that. So she's trying to protect her children. So for everyone to be like, I don't know what happened, is inexcusable. She had a child.
So the other thing that also fueled them was the rise in blogs like Perez Hilton, Delisted, whatever. Also, Kevin coming into the picture and how I think in some ways Britney was like completely shed the idea that she was going to even try to fulfill anybody else's idea of what she's supposed to be doing. And what that looked like, they fed on it. Because, like, your impression of Kevin was everybody's impression of Kevin at the time. Just like, who the fuck is this guy? Especially in comparison to someone like Justin Timberlake.
I don't know that I had an opinion on Justin Timberlake. I just remember thinking I thought Kevin Federline looked gross.
But that's what I mean.
Like, I'm sure that was also fed
but there's
to me.
there's like a huge dichotomy there.
But even
Kevin is also emblematic of like
Right.
where Britney's going.
But they show them on the Ellen show.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he's sitting on that couch made me, it like grossed me out even in this year.
It's a real shame because
Yeah.
he was definitely I get the sense that Kevin was opportunistic from the jump.
Okay. So they show a bunch of clips of like Britney has the child in her lap while she's trying to drive away. And then they also show there's like a tabloid headline where she like trips and they're like, Britney, it's like, she fucking tripped. Like everyone tripped. My mom dropped me down the stairs. Shit happens. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why that's being focused.
And that's literally the least of it.
Right.
So it also needs to be said that all Britney wanted to do was have kids. Again, I can't reiterate this enough. Literally, she is on record saying, so she was a practitioner of Kabbalah. Her and Madonna became close friends.
Yeah.
So they would practice and discuss Kabbalah. When Britney had her first child, she said, I no longer practice Kabbalah. My child is my religion. Truly, Britney loves her kids so much. And what's crazy is you can find tons of fucking examples of this as recently as the last 5 years. Actually, on that the Instagram account that I was talking about, they had 2 submissions today or recently of people that were involved in child sports along with Britney's kids and have come into contact with her through that. And everybody, and it was corroborated, so more than one person chimed in about this, that Britney's so kind, so down to earth, talks to all the other people who's around, very invested in what, like, I guess her sons do sports, obviously, soccer or some shit, like, knows all the kids' names, bought like 30-40 pizzas for everybody.
Is the epitome of a soccer mom.
Literally, Britney lives for her kids. Always has lived for her kids. She was so thrilled to be a mom.
This is where they start with the interview with Matt Lauer.
Yes.
I do have to ask you, no shade, but why does Britney look the way she does in this interview?
So this is a turn in how Britney presents herself publicly. Going back to what I said, where Britney's pushing back, she doesn't care.
Okay.
She's also pregnant. She's very pregnant. Also, Britney chews gum all the time. I don't know if that's still true, but even if you're paying attention to the doc in the earlier clips, she's just chewing gum all the time.
Yeah,
she likes to chew gum.
The chewing gum thing didn't even like register on my radar. It was like the lashes and the blush and just the hair. I was jarred.
It is.
Yeah.
She's
wearing like a
very low cut top. Her titties look like they're squished. It must be said that this is 2005, mind you. So the epitome of fashion is not great.
That is true. Like that's
It's
fair.
not great. We
But you
don't
could
have
see
any
the tracks in her. It was just like
Well, that's the other thing. So historically, they have continually bleached Britney's hair. She's not a natural blonde. And essentially over time, and this is something that's heard in Stages, which comes out, I think it was released in 2002. I actually just finally got my own copy of it. I'll bring it over sometime.
okay.
Stages was a special that was like a documentary style film that was done while Britney was on tour in Mexico. And they asked her all sorts of uncomfortable questions then. Can't wait to talk about that. But in passing, I've seen it. I've seen a rip of it on YouTube. It's one of those things. So if you've heard Josh talk about me talking about Britney, he will mention that he knew I was in deep because I was watching rips of things that had like Portuguese subtitles. And this was one of those things. Like I found a rip of Stages on YouTube. So I finally have my own copy. Can't wait to watch it in full splendor with no subtitles. But one of the things she mentions in this documentary is that her hair is fucked. Her hair is fried from not being taken care of properly and over bleaching, which makes sense because at a certain point
Your hair's
there wasn't, well, your hair rebels and like,
right.
it is what it is. And drag queens have come out and said like proper wigs and hair extensions and etc. didn't really exist until recently.
Like,
so yeah,
as in like the last 3 to 4 years, like not like 10 years ago, like very recently.
correct. So at this
Lace
time,
fronts have just recently become
just
accessible.
recently became good. Just recently. So there's that. I feel like it's fair to keep those things in mind.
Yes.
Now, that being said, Britney's doing whatever the fuck Britney wants to do at this point. I'm not saying Britney has taste. I think we know that the taste level is where it is. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And honestly, that's your prerogative.
Mm-hmm.
That's your choice.
It was just
It's very jarring.
Okay, I know I've seen the interview before, but I just like it came up and I was like, oh wow, because
Britney's also one of those people where you quickly can see on her face when she is like fucking over it.
Yeah. There's
this photo of her that gets circulated. It's like around a similar time or just after her first kid is born. I can't remember exactly. Where she's at a party and she looks like completely normal, what you would think Britney Spears looks like at the time, but then she sort of melts into this other person, and it is so funny. Like the photos of that night are so funny. It's used as a meme all the time, but it's her looking completely fucking miserable because she stopped trying so hard to live up to the idea of what people thought Britney Spears was supposed to be. So that's like what you're seeing is the de-evolution of that. She literally stopped buying the bullshit, and especially once the kids got involved and she was like empowered by being in love with Kevin and also his wife. Mm-hmm. She was like, oh, fuck everything. I'm going to be as tacky as I wish to be. Plus, these were tacky times. Realistically.
I mean, like,
everything was tacky. But Britney was like, I don't give a rat's ass.
I'm going to pop off just a little. It's
pop
not
off,
even,
go.
So let's talk about Matt Lauer in this interview for just a second. I don't know when in my brain I had instinctively made the decision that Matt Lauer was a piece of garbage, but it was long before any allegations or anything like that have come up about him. I was in an Applebee's.
He's insufferable.
I was in an Applebee's in 2013 drinking because
what else does one do in an Applebee's?
Well, it was definitely like we're in a suburbs, so where are we going to drink alcohol? It was
also valid.
Yeah. And I was like paying for a top shelf because I was just like, I hate everything that's happening around me in this Applebee's. But for whatever reason, I don't remember what was going on that night, but I think there was like a televised event. I don't think it was like the Super Bowl, but it was like something was happening. And like Matt Lauer was one of the presenters at some point. And I was a little bit drunk, but I just like slammed my hand on the bar. I was like, fuck Matt Lauer. And the bartender like turned and he was like, why don't you like him? I was like, there's something fucking wrong with that dude. And I don't know what it is, but we'll find out one day.
And now we know. And now we know.
I think it definitely like started with his interview with Annie Hathaway. Whenever she lost the weight to do the Les Mis part, that was definitely like my first like, you're gross. You are gross. Also, the way the public treats Annie Hathaway is like, I will not stand for it.
I don't know why we treat her that way.
I never fell off the Annie Hathaway train. I was always just, I think she's great. I don't know. Anyway, that's a different conversation.
It's neither here nor there.
I don't know what Matt Lauer thought he was like parent of the year. Does he have kids? I don't even fucking know. But he definitely thought he was a better parent than Britney Spears.
This was just when the narrative was started. And it's like,
he mansplains shit to her. Gross.
That how could she ever think that she was going to be a good mom, and she makes irresponsible decisions and blah 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 blah.
So then they talk about Britney's divorce with Kevin and the custody battle. It essentially lands that like Kevin has custody of the kids.
Things get really deep and dark here.
They breeze over it. This is sort of.
They do. So this is when the paparazzi are really chasing Britney down hard. Especially because her and Kevin divorce. And up until a certain point, it was very much Britney on a united front about her love and adoration for Kevin. So, the fact that they divorced and seemingly suddenly was like a big deal. So the Paps are really chasing after hard. And then like this is where questionable shit starts to happen. When I say that, I mean like she like has run-ins with the paparazzi where like she ran over this guy's foot because they're crowding around her car. She like hits another car. Like definitely not great stuff. And then they find out that
I'm sorry.
She doesn't have a driver's license. Like shit like that starts to happen and then people just go fucking ape shit.
But I'm just saying, if you are in front of my car and you are like preventing me from going somewhere, you best believe I'm going to run over your fucking foot.
Period.
That's the least I would do. Period. Yeah. So like, get out of my way.
And
as Kylie Minogue once sang, get out of my way.
Also, the documentary does not bring up the fact that Britney was starting to party more around this time.
Okay, I do have a note about this.
Okay.
There's a photo of Britney
Spears and Paris Hilton
and Lindsay, and then the caption is "Bimbo Summit," and I know that's terrible, but I do deep down in my soul want to be. I want that to be a caption of me. Like I want someone to be like Bimbo Summit because that's so. It's to me. I mean it in a camp way. Like I would never.
Obviously,
like, I don't think that this was good, but it really tickled me when it popped up because I was just like. I would like to take that.
It's interesting you mention that because the podcast Ledoux, you remember this, has a whole episode about Britney. Britney gets brought up, but it's mostly about Paris and Lindsay Lohan.
Okay.
So she sort of like summarizes and explains their relationship because they're seen with each other often, but also openly hate one another. Not Britney and Paris, but Lindsay and Paris. And there's like a long storied history to it and a feud that lasted literal years.
Interesting.
And Britney kind of ends up in the middle of things randomly. And essentially what comes out about that time, just speaking very briefly on it, is that Paris comes out many years later and says that while she is photographed partying often, she's never drunk. She facilitates other people getting drunk, but Paris herself is not drunk.
Paris isn't drunk.
No. Not the way Lindsay and Britney were getting zooted on whatever was going on. Because the photos of her and Britney is not just drunk. Britney doesn't look like she's in there. And it's pretty disturbing. However, if you want to hear more about like that saga, I highly recommend that podcast is stellar.
What's it called?
Ledoux, you remember this. So LESDEUX, you remember this. Okay. And it's all about the early aughts culture.
Interesting. Send me those.
I will. It's so fascinating. But another thing that comes out about this time is that Britney is being steered around by these people and is paying for their lifestyle and not necessarily aware that that is what she's doing.
So this is kind of where you see the turn of her relationship with the paparazzi too.
They start taking upskirt photos of her, as well as Lindsay Lohan. Actually, this is when the famous fire crotch moment happens.
The thing that disturbed me the most was like watching Britney just like trying to have lunch and then just like a mob of people. Also, like it's 2021 too, so like I just can't.
Also very weird.
Yeah, it just like was everything was unsettling about it, but it was like so unsettling.
I couldn't imagine just trying to do something basic and being swarmed by people. I don't do well in crowds ever. I have an egg timer and it be ticking and then I'm done. And I'm like gone from my body and may still be existing in a space with crowds, but like my consciousness leaves me because I just am very uncomfortable for one reason or another. Very uncomfortable. I would not have left my house. This poor woman. Truly.
And they kind of jump right into Britney shaving her head.
Correct.
I don't think I had ever heard the quote of her saying, "I'm tired of people touching me," but that's dark.
Also, when I cried.
Yeah, that's
Another time I cried.
really dark. Also, could you imagine being like the hairstylist that would have been asked, like, because I think I would have hesitated too and have been like, are you sure?
Can you imagine? Truly.
Yeah.
Britney Spears walks into your little ass salon and says, "Shave my head." You have to be the person that's like, no.
I don't know that I would have even said, I just have been like, are you sure? I don't know. I think I could have been the one to do it. I'm like, do you want to fade? What are we doing, sis? Like,
truly.
because then, never mind. They would have vilified whoever the hairstylist that did it. So then we go back to this paparazzi man. And he happens to be the one the umbrella thing happens to. And I was like, this man had the audacity.
She never really told us to stop. She would just say stop for the day.
And literally the interviewer, they kept the audio from the interview in, which they never do in documentaries.
Mm-mm.
It's like, even when she asked you to stop.
Multiple times.
Yeah, multiple times. That wasn't enough.
And if you watch the clips from that time, she's miserable.
You can see it on her
miserable.
face. Yeah.
And sometimes she yells at them. She tells them to get away from her. She asks them, "Why are you doing this to me?"
And then there was one where like a fight broke out in front of her, and she was like, and then she's in a different scenario. She's like, "Please don't fight." Like
she literally says things like, "I'm scared. I'm afraid.
I can't see the entrance. Like I can't see where we're going." Like
right. Because there's that many people.
The photos of Britney with the umbrella take a very special place in my brain. And I think at the time, I can't say that I was like thinking about it in like a proper term, like mental health wise. But I think deep down in my soul, I always felt like it was some kind of perfect imagery of a woman trying to take back her life. Mm-hmm. And not even like that she was mentally unwell at the time, which like maybe she was.
I'm not fully convinced. I think the jury is out there.
I'm just saying like that's what the media wanted us to think.
But that was a narrative.
Just like I almost threw a unicorn through someone's back windshield. So
crazier things have happened.
Yes.
And especially when you're truly chased through your everyday life relentlessly and you continue to lose things, because all the while and up until the culmination in Britney shaving her head, she's constantly being stripped of her rights as a parent. Kevin is pushing back for her not to have custody. She's not seeing the kids very much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these people are up her ass. So I remember at the time there were kind of two narratives. Like, this is another sign of Britney spiraling, and also another contingency of people who were like, good. She should fucking flip out and scare these people, because then maybe they'll leave her alone.
I mean, if they're not going to listen to her verbally say no, maybe she just needs to be like physically.
And there was something satisfying in seeing her like come alive in that way, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think I ever found them funny.
No, it wasn't funny.
That was never like the read that I got, because some people definitely did.
Definitely, and it got memed to hell, and it's sometimes still memed to hell in a particular way. Not even necessarily like negatively per se, but like it's become a pop culture canon in a certain narrative, and I mean, I definitely didn't find it funny.
So then we find out that Britney loses custody of her children, and then Sam Lutfi enters the scene. And so I texted Tiffany, because the documentary I don't think did a very good job describing who this man was. They were like, this is Sam Lutfi. He is the beginning of the end. And I was just like, okay, but why? And they like never tell you why.
He had been around up until this point, though, if I remember correctly. And of course, I'll expand on everything. But you start to, so you see Britney with like different groups of people, right? So she was with Paris for some time. They rolled together. There's lots and lots of photos of them together. Slowly but surely, you start to see Britney with like, you know, a couple different people in and out, whatever. And then Sam becomes someone you see her with all the time. So if you search for photos from that time period, eventually you see Sam in all the photos, because he became her constant companion. So I'm going to give some background on who he is.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So to start off, before even getting down to Britney, in 2014, Sam was linked to Amanda Bynes' infamous breakdown and subsequent psychiatric hold, during which time Sam played it off like he was Amanda's friend when he convinced her to fly out to LA, but he was actually working with her parents, who later sought out a conservatorship. Which I believe was unsuccessful, or was in fact just temporary. Yeah, I don't know how into following that whole thing was for Amanda Bynes. I like was aware of it at the time, and was well enough into my mental health journey that I was like, she's not okay.
I found hers moment far more, I don't want to say interesting, and I didn't really follow it. It just, if I came across it, I would just be like, I don't know how to describe it. Like my face would just go, oh, what is happening?
There's a weird ambiguity to Britney's situation where you're like, was it that bad? Because the narrative is so up in the air, and there wasn't social media, whereas with Amanda Bynes there was social media.
It was literally
and Amanda Bynes was talking a lot about what was happening as it was happening, whereas Britney wasn't necessarily in the same way. There was no platform, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram.
Right.
She would have had to have talked through other people, and at that point all the people that had been in Britney's life managing her personal and professional career were gone. She either booted them out, or Sam cornered and became that person instead of those other people.
Interesting that he was also involved with Amanda Bynes.
Yep. So in 2019, Sam also had another 5-year restraining order taken out against him by Courtney Love, who accused...
But who is he?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay, well, you were like, I'm going to tell you who he is. You started in 2014.
Yeah. I got to establish a certain pattern of behavior, and then I'm going to get into it. So according to Lynn Spears, they met in October of 2007, after which Sam became unusually attached to the singer in her life. In the restraining order issued against him in 2008, Lynn says that Sam essentially moved into Britney's home and has purported to take control of her life, home, and finances. In public, Sam sometimes claimed to be Britney's managers, and other times just her friend. But in their case, to obtain the restraining order, the Spears family described an increasingly controlling Sam, who started to decide what medications Britney was taking, what paparazzi were allowed to photograph her, who she spoke to, and who was able to visit her. In 2009, the family was granted a restraining order. Although Sam tried to fight the order in court, saying that he was only responding to Britney's cries for help. The family refuted the claim, and Sam was ordered to stay away from the singer for the next 3 years. In 2019, Sam was handed yet another 5-year restraining order that prevents him from having any contact with Britney or her family. It also prohibits him from making any negative comments about Britney or her family online after Jamie Spears alleged that Sam had been inciting fans to use the hashtag #FreeBritney to imply that Britney was being controlled against her will, because Sam got involved in the movement pretty quickly. So at the time that all this was forming, it really wasn't clear what Sam's role was. And he would talk to the paparazzi on behalf of Britney often. And then all of these conflicting things started to come out about what drugs Britney was taking. Because again, she would be looking zooted in some of these photos, and it wasn't necessarily drunk. Like, she literally looked zooted. At the time, I know one of the things that was reported was that Sam was drugging her with specific things without Britney's knowledge, or telling Britney to take specific things. And literally, some of the reports went as far to say that Sam was mind controlling her to a degree. So, and this was also something that was used against Britney later, as in Britney cannot be trusted to judge who should be involved in her life because she let someone like Sam in, and then this is what happened. So Britney commented regarding Sam in 2019. So this was like right around when Free Britney was like coming out.
Okay.
And things were like, speculation was beginning. Britney posted on Instagram, "I wanted to say hi because things that are being said have just gotten out of control. Wow. There's rumors, death threats to my family and my team, and just so many crazy things being said. I am trying to take a moment for myself, but everything that's happening is just making it harder for me. Don't believe anything you read and hear. These fake emails everywhere were crafted by Sam Lefty years ago. I did not write them. He was pretending to be me and communicating with my team with a fake email address. My situation is unique, but I promise I'm doing what's best at this moment. You may not know this about me, but I am strong and stand up for what I want. Your love and dedication is amazing, but what I need right now is a little bit of privacy to deal with all the hard things that life is throwing my way. If you could do that, I would be forever grateful. Love you." So it's really hard to say, because now, through a 2021 lens and some of the things that have come out in court, a lot of questions have been thrown around as far as what control Britney has of her social media, because there have been some inconsistencies in tone. And also, like, and I know this is going to sound so stupid, but if you watch the doc, they fucking reference it there. But
the
just like
instead of the emoji.
Yes, like emojis being used. And when the announcement of Britney going into a facility at the beginning of 2019 or 2020, whichever it was, I don't even know anymore. The little graphic that was like thrown up on Instagram was with like a little smiley face like typed out as opposed to an emoji, and people were like very sus about it. And I do think that the tone can vary through the account. So that was the comment that Britney made at the time, but it's also hard to say.
Was it Britney?
Was it? Because also, if you go back and Google and search for things pertaining to Sam at this time, you can find handwritten letters that appear to be in Britney's handwriting. And you are able to find samples of Britney's handwriting on the internet, because she used to write letters and post them on her website.
Right.
There's a lot of samples of her handwriting, even as recently as like 2014, 2015 and beyond, because she wrote a letter to like the gay community, because she was chosen as basically like the chairperson or figurehead of Pride for 1 year in the UK, and she went and performed, and it was like a big deal, and everyone was so excited, and she like wrote this letter about how the gays mean so much to her.
I did love her video. Like,
it's like so cute and pure, because she knows she's for the gays, the girls, the gays, and everyone. So if you go online, like, you can find the scanned handwritten letters, and it does appear to be her handwriting, but she's writing in third person, because this is one of the things that lend credence then to the narrative that Britney is largely being controlled by being threatened of losing custody of her kids, because she did lose custody of them. She shaves her head. All the things happen.
Right,
Eventually, we're getting to the part where she won't give custody over. She locks herself in the bathroom with the 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't going to do anything to hurt them. She just didn't want them to go because she didn't know when she was going to see them again.
Mm-hmm.
And because the arrangement was so fucked up at that point. So another thing that is discussed a lot is whether Britney really was agreeing to all this because she needed it and wanted it and it was what was best for her, or because she's being threatened. And that is sort of like what some of this is said to, like in these letters that you can find. She's saying that basically a lot of the choices and decisions that are being made are not of her own volition, but because they keep telling Britney that they're going to take her babies away.
That's so gross.
It's really bad. And like, she sent some of these letters to Sam.
So, as someone who's...
And there's also a whole narrative that is brought up that Britney was forced to divorce Kevin also. And it's referenced in these letters as well.
So how do you feel about Sam as like someone who's a...
I think he's a user. And that's why I established what I did at the beginning before I even got into talking about his relationship to Britney, because there's a pattern of behavior.
Right.
Granted, like maybe some of the things that he said to Britney at some point could have been true. The fact of the matter is that he did capitalize on when the movement started and was sending people to harass Jamie Lynn and her family. Like, was encouraging people to harass them as though that was going to help Britney in any way. He just wants to be a part of the limelight. He wants to be famous. He wants the clout, etc., etc. I don't think he is a good source for anything.
Okay. Let's get back to the document. Just the
Yes.
flow. They show Perez Hilton like a smidge second, and it was as if my whole body got sucked up through my asshole, and I was like, oh, I hate this. Like, and like there's like layers and layers of things happening there. There's some just like, I see myself in that moment. Like, I just see hatred. I just see like it's all very bad. And the haircut. Oh, Tiffany, that haircut. And I was like, oh no. Oh, it like truly triggered something.
He
deep
would
in me.
say things like he hopes something else happens with her because he wants the clicks. He would say awful stuff about how she deserved certain things to happen to her. He was also all over Amy Winehouse when she was married to that really like that the other drug addict that she was married to at one point. And like their whole trials and tribulations and their very public messiness, he was on that shit like white on rice, drawn all over people's photos, putting cum on people.
Ugh.
A grown fucking man, mind you. Later on, he in 2008 for the circus era, he shoots some sort of introduction and like little interstitial videos that play on her tour. He's like the ringleader of the circus.
Ew. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about that. Okay. Ooh, the biggest villain that comes out of this whole thing, Miss Vivian. Miss Vivian. What a choice for this woman. The audacity of this woman to come on this documentary. She clearly knows which way this is getting skewed. Like, I can't speak, no one can speak on how balanced this documentary is because we don't know the real story. But Vivian absolutely knew this was going to be like skewing it in Britney's favor, right? She knew. I can only imagine. I don't know if this woman has an internet presence or what, but I'm sure she regrets her decision to appear on this documentary.
I'm fucking sure.
I don't believe in like being hateful towards people on the internet, but like I can only imagine like this woman, what has happened in her life, the whirlwind. For you to come onto this documentary after having already worked for Jamie, directly for Jamie, to come give some vague explanation about conservatorship, and then to then say you've never seen someone get out of it, almost with a smile on her face. And then the text after her last comment is that she now again works for Jamie and is speaking on the team's behalf in the in the media now. I cannot the so
She basically implies that Britney's not trying hard enough to get out of the conservatorship, because if she did, then she would be out of it. And that's when they were like, have you ever seen anybody get out of a conservatorship? And she has to say no, because there is nothing documented as far as anyone has found.
This woman.
Insufferable.
At first I thought it was interesting that they had this person that like had worked for Jamie, right? Like my first thought was like, interesting. This is like the first we're getting to see at the other side. And of course I wasn't expecting her to say anything because she's a fucking lawyer. So I was like, I don't even know what good this is gonna, but then the text showed up that she's back on days after, weeks after. It was not a very long time after this woman filmed this interview that she was back on this.
Here's my thing. At the end of the day, it's Britney's choice and prerogative, and right as an American, as a human being walking this earth, to fuck up her life if that's what she wants to do. Right. It's her fucking right to piss away every cent she's ever made if that's what she chooses to do, as long as she's not hurting anybody and not hurting herself. And again, at a certain point, I can understand the question being, is she gonna die? Because at one point I turned to Josh and I said, this is the first time I thought she was gonna die, because it got that bad. The lead up to like seeing her in the ambulance and everything, all of the smaller things that had occurred, and like how the paparazzi was still chasing her, and like the stuff with like her driving and like getting into minor fender benders and stuff. It's like something is gonna fucking happen and she's gonna get hurt. It's only a matter of time. But once it was determined that she was like fit mentally, that should have been the end of it.
Yeah.
Because it's her fucking right. She earned all that money. Who cares? We've all been in a position in our lives where we have been doing things we knew we shouldn't be doing. And somebody was telling us, don't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. And you looked at that person and literally spit in their face. I can tell you specific moments in my life where I was like fucking standing on the other side of a dining room table screaming at my mom and my grandma and telling them to fuck off, because I was going to do exactly what I wanted to do. Because in that moment, if you tried to tell me otherwise, I would do the exact opposite, because I was becoming an adult and I wanted control over my fucking life. So is it such a fucking unreasonable thing to assume that Britney experienced that tenfold more than the average human being would ever experience this in a microcosm of a crazy situation, and she was just that desperate to be able to control the things that she did? So she went to great lengths and likely did put herself in harm's way. Because another thing that happens is there's several moments where she's in and out of rehab.
Yeah.
At least twice before it sticks and she stays for a whole stint in rehab. But she also says at one point, like, it's supposed to be facetious. And again, we'll get into like the timeline and like other smaller things that happen. But she says almost facetiously to a paparazzi, oh, I like totally needed to go to like rehab. They were so right in sending me. I definitely have a drinking problem. And that's the way she's speaking, as though she's speaking as a caricature of herself. Like kind of casting doubt on the fact that she had to be there. But she completes a program. And I assume this is when they start telling her, like, if you ever want to see your kids again, you will do exactly what we say.
So we meet Adam Streisand, who Britney attempts to hire to make sure her father is not the conservator. So the way I understood this part is like Britney knows she can't get out of it, but she knows the father is not the one.
This is what I mean.
Yeah.
She understands at a certain point she's going to have to go along with this to be able to have her rights as a parent restored because things have gotten so bad.
And then the judge says, well, you've not seen whatever, the documents that I have. So you would
been
know.
privy to, so you don't know.
So I don't, like, none of this makes sense. It's like, you can't be hired by her because you weren't hired by the conservators to work for her.
Yeah,
Like,
because
it's just
Britney, because technically the conservatorship has already been established to some degree. And if they don't think you're fit to choose your own counsel, they choose one for you. So essentially everything gets written off as Britney is still unstable. She cannot select her own counsel.
So after this, it's like Britney starts getting to see her children again.
Mm-hmm.
And like back on
Supervised.
the timeline. Yeah. They basically detail all the things that the conservators can do.
Mm-hmm. Which is a fucking lot.
That's a lot. And then there was a weird moment where like Lynn was trying to get control just of her health and well-being. Like I was like, you can contract out like specific acts of the conservatorship to
yeah,
people?
it's supposed to work like that for it to be more ethical, ideally. But I don't know that it's necessarily always worked like that.
So then they show a clip from Britney for the record, which is apparently the only time you get to see a real glimpse into how Britney.
I think it's the last time we saw a truly organic look into her life before everything became locked down. And we're going to talk about it. It's so sad. I have had it on DVD since like 2018 and I've never watched it because I've watched parts and I just know it's going to be like too much.
The quote that I highlighted is that she says they hear me but they're not listening.
Just wait.
Also, like, they show like brief clips of like Jamie and Britney interacting with each other and I was like, he's gross.
Oh, it's all bad.
Yeah, it's not good. None of it is good.
And really, up until this point, anytime Jamie is brought up, it's not good.
No.
They've had a contentious relationship. I think the problem here is that Jamie is very domineering and was able to muscle his way through everything. I actually meant to look up. I feel like Jamie and Lynn were divorced at some point too.
Oh.
But I meant to look this up. Yeah, they divorced in 2002. And actually, so I briefly Googled it to verify because I was pretty sure they were divorced. Britney has been put on record that it was the best thing that's ever happened to her family.
Oh.
That they divorced. And she was quoted saying that in 2002.
So then the documentary goes on, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, to talk about all like the good things that come after this. She gets the residency in Las Vegas. She's making a lot of money, making a lot of TV appearances, was on the X Factor as a judge, like ABC, all these things. And then Miss Fee comes back on and she's like, well, I was hired by the touring company, but not the Spears family to be on this tour. And I was like, that's weird. That's gross.
Camp
That's
Spears.
icky.
Camp Spears did not hire her.
So, and
you get the impression that she lost access directly
to Britney.
to Britney and was still orbiting and maybe occasionally landed in the
Sure.
sphere of Britney, but that she is no longer close confidant of Britney.
Not allowed to be.
Correct.
They talk about the residency just a little bit. It was like one of the most successful of all time.
Britney created residencies in Las Vegas
for young people.
For modern young artists. Britney did it first because literally when she announces, and I know I've said this before on this podcast, but truly, like, Christina Aguilera literally said, like, she's going to go out to the desert to basically kill her career. She's going out to the desert to flop. It's going to be the worst thing she's ever done.
But you make so much money doing them.
And if anything,
because you're living in one place.
Exactly.
You're not having to hop around. People come to you.
And it was good for her kids because then they were like,
one place,
they had
steady.
a home base.
Right.
And then she would tour on the summers and take her kids with her. And they would go to, like, it was always mostly overseas and stuff.
International.
And she would do like a couple shows locally, but her last like true world tour was in 2011. She actually came to Pittsburgh for the Femme Fatale tour. And I remember looking up tickets and I could have spent $1,000 to meet her. And I chose not to because I denied myself joy. And now I may have lost the opportunity forever. So that's something I have to live with. That's my cross to bear.
So they smartly in the documentary just start shoveling in clips of Britney doing things on Instagram. And then we got to see this interestingly curated what Britney wants to show us. And like, I mean, this is just like, well, I don't know that much, but what I will say, it's just, she's just like truly a mom.
She's a mom.
Yeah.
She's a mom who posts Minions memes.
I'm sorry?
Minions memes.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just,
like
I missed the word.
Pinterest
The word
stuff.
minion got like a loss.
Oh, sorry.
I was
like
what?
truly, there was a photo of her and I think I have it saved because like I'm going to create Google Docs for you guys. I'm going to make all my research available. I want to reference like certain photos. It's going to be like a whole fantasy. But literally one of the photos from like when her Instagram started to blow up was her in a shirt that says Pokemon. Because
so
her
cute.
kids are so into Pokemon. And like her posting her kids' drawings on Instagram and being like, look how fucking talented they are. And they got into skateboarding and she would post videos of them skateboarding. Like very engaged with what's going on with her kids 1,000%. And even when she would tour, like the kids would come with her.
Mm-hmm.
Because she wanted to like take them around and stuff.
Yeah. Let them see the world.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So this is my favorite part of the whole documentary. And I don't even remember this happening in real time. Like I don't remember this. This didn't even blip on my radar. Britney's second residency is supposed to be announced.
Oh, yeah.
And there's supposed to be performance. There's supposed to be a whole thing. She's supposed to like say
I think this was at the beginning of 2020. Was it? This would have been like in January. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I guess I had a lot of other things coming to me on my plate. I did not realize that was 2020.
I feel like it was.
So they show, so Britney gets lifted up. She does her like walks down the stairs. And I love, my favorite thing about Britney Spears is she never walks down a set of stairs without hands.
Oh, I might have lied. It might not have been 2020. It was like way earlier than that. It was 2018.
But I just love that Miss Britney.
It was supposed to be, so she was announcing it towards the end of 2018 and it was supposed to start in 2019.
Okay.
So she was already working on this because there were clips that were posted on Instagram of her like new choreographed numbers for specific songs.
Okay.
And songs you didn't hear in the first residency. Sorry, my timeline's all fucked up. As Tom learned today, I don't have like a really great grasp on time or time management in any way. The way I'm fighting to get better.
Today was the worst it's been for you in a while because I had to like lay it down for you. Like, your plans and my plans don't make
any sense.
So she walks down the stairs. Two gentlemen grab her hands. Britney always walks down the stairs with hands. There's always gentlemen helping her down the stairs.
Opulence.
I love it. She walks down the stairs, just keeps walking, gets in the car, and then is driven away.
Mm-hmm. Because I think this is when Britney starts to push back. I think shit started to go south.
That's how the documentary framed it as well.
And I think this is where, and like things happen like in quick succession after this. But I think Britney was starting to question what was happening and why.
So the residency is canceled. Jamie's health is being cited as the
And
reason.
granted, his like whole fucking kidney collapsed or some shit. Like, he had a major fucking organ failure, and it was directly related to him being a fucking drunk for most of her life. Pretty sure.
I do not care.
I'm just saying, like, there was some, like,
I mean,
at first it seemed almost reasonable,
okay.
like, oh, okay, like, her dad's sick or whatever, and she wants to genuinely spend time with him. But when it gets fuckity-uppity is when you hear that Jamie laid hands on one of her sons, and the son took out a restraining order against him.
I thought Kevin took out the restraining order.
On behalf of the son,
Yeah.
but still.
So, also, Andrew, this is when he leaves the conservatorship.
Yes, and this was
just-
after he asked for the increase because of upcoming projects.
Well, I don't feel like they were very clear on that. I don't think until, like, one of the people from Britney's Graham had said, like, he had just asked for a raise. I was like, wait, what? He asked for a raise, then he's gone? Like,
Literally,
interesting.
it happened that fast. It was like
Wow.
a couple months prior. He'd asked for this raise and he got it because the announcement for this residency was supposed to happen. And then literally she cancels everything. And he's like, fuck this, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
And then this is when they announced, like, she was in a facility of some sort.
So they announced this because people noticed that
She's
She's
gone
gone.
from the gram.
gone from the gram. She's gone. Someone who's insanely active on Instagram.
Gone.
And I mean gone like no paparazzi photos. Not seen with Sam, her boyfriend. Nothing. Gone.
And you were, like, in real time with this. Like,
Yeah.
you, like,
I
were-
was like
you-
starting to get into it because
Yeah.
it was weird.
I mean, it is jarring when someone you see post on social media all the time, like, disappears.
And it was
I
also
have
weird.
personally done that to people.
And it was also weird that like you couldn't find photos of her anywhere. Because as I referenced earlier,
like, you couldn't
you
find
could
it.
truly Google her now. And I mean, I don't know if right now because we're in a global pandemia and like, et cetera, but you can Google like so-and-so photos and find paparazzi photos. Even in the pandemic, you can find paparazzi photos
Yeah.
of people. It was a whole thing for fucking Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas and everything. It became like a meme.
And Camila and Sean.
Yeah,
too.
they would get fucking photographed walking through their neighborhoods looking like shit because it was a panorama, whatever. So it was like so strange that she just literally evaporated. And then this is when everything hits with Britney's gram because allegedly this intern
The
at a
sound
law firm. Yeah.
clip. Is that who Anonymous is?
Yes, that's who
Yeah.
Anonymous is. And like they play the audio on the podcast
Yeah.
and like everything just blows up. And I will tell you, I believed it right away. But then I had some sense talked into me and there was some doubt cast upon the whole thing. And I was like,
Where
all
do you
right,
land now?
like you can't really know what's going on. It's really hard to say. Well, I think it's pretty irrefutable at this point.
Okay.
Because Britney literally came out and said in court proceedings, if my dad continues to be in charge of my affairs, I will not perform. I will not do it. Because, yes, we don't have a lot of Britney's own words as far as we know. There's some contention and question to be said about the things that come out on Instagram. We don't know. However, the courts, it's all documented. You can't get around that. So
Yeah.
her saying literally in court, and that's what all the motions filed have been about recently, not even to end the conservatorship,
Just to get
simply
Jamie off.
to remove him from it. That says a lot. And then as time has gone on, and I know, again, we're in a global pandemic,
Pierogi.
de leche. Yeah. You've seen Britney's view of her own life narrow. She's like alone a lot. You don't see her kids on her gram at all after a certain point. And it's like truly very sad because you get the impression that she's very lonely. And at one point during quarantine, she hops on Instagram and she's like, I haven't seen my boyfriend Sam in so long. I miss him so much. My pants don't even fit because I've lost weight. That's how much I'm missing him. I think she did it on purpose. And I think she does this sometimes. Like, she'll do certain things on purpose because then it draws attention to the thing that she wants.
What she wants.
And then, because not long after that,
Sam was around.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to not try to wrap up the whole thing, but get through the documentary because we have like post-doc stuff that has happened. Jamie says the Free Britney movement's unfounded after this anonymous tip is sent into Britney's gram. And I'm wondering what how it was presented to Britney's gram for them to feel confident enough to like release it.
They got it in an email, and then I guess they did their own independent fact checking. But also, these are just podcasters that are podcasting in their free time.
Not even journalists. So
no.
They're comedians.
So that was like the other thing. It's like, you don't know.
Right. Then they show a clip of Britney's brother, Brian, appearing on a podcast, saying he doesn't understand what they mean by free Britney, as she can essentially do whatever she wants.
That's the Pokemon.
That's so cute.
Britney's a very simple person. Truly.
He says that my family is full of strong-minded women, and it sucks. He said that.
Yeah, he said his family has two very strong-minded women in it, and him and his dad are fucking outnumbered, essentially, is what he says.
And then he also says she's always wanted to get out of it. Then, like, it's very frustrating.
It's fucking terrifying, is what it is, because it's like, well, then how long?
So I don't normally watch Hulu because I have the ads version, but they did an advertisement for the list, John Bonet, because I guess some stuff is now resurfacing about John Bonet. And I was like, I wrote it down. I was like, you want to watch that? As I was like doing this. So that has nothing to do with anything. So then we cut back to the protesters out in front of the court. Britney's trying to get this bank to be on the conservatorship.
Mm-hmm. To at least split the responsibility to start.
And then in one of the documents from this, she states that she appreciates
the love and informed support of her fans. So, ever since this doc broke, first of all, everyone's watched it. If you have not watched it yet and you're listening to this, I'm shocked that you haven't watched it. That's how many people have watched this fucking thing. Britney like trended on Twitter, like all sorts of shit. And slowly but surely, like other little nuggets are starting to shake loose from all this. Starting with Sam, her boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Just started popping up left and right. So at one point he posted on his story, "Thank you for all the love and support." Nothing crazy. Some stuff comes out about Lou Taylor, who I believe was one of Britney's managers, and all his corrupt dealings and his heavy-handed work in continuing the conservatorship. People are coming for him, including Courtney Love. Jamie Spears goes to CNN and like makes a statement justifying probate conservatorship for mental health challenged folks, which is fucking dark and disgusting. So then you keep going and like more time passes and Sam is recorded by a paparazzi saying, "I've always wanted nothing but the best for my better half and will continue to support her following her dreams and creating the future she wants and deserves." So then he posts on his Instagram story, "Now it's important for people to understand that I have zero respect for someone trying to control our relationship and constantly throwing obstacles our way. In my opinion, Jamie is a total dick. I won't be going into details because I've always respected our privacy, but at the same time, I didn't come to this country to not be able to express my opinion in freedom. And he like said it again in person. Like, fuck him, fuck this man. He doesn't like care about us. He doesn't want us to be happy. Like, he now, but the idea is that Sam feels comfortable speaking out now because it's going to be harder for them to retaliate against them when everything is so public right now. Which is like encouraging because that's further validation that is like shit is fucked up and Jamie is doing something wrong.
Yeah.
If literally the other person who was debatably closest to Britney is coming out and saying like, yo, Jamie's a fucking dick and trying to keep us apart. Because that's basically what he just said. Jamie's a dick and he's trying to control our relationship. You know what else is like deeply sad? There have been rumors over time that Britney wanted to have more kids and get married again. And it just never happened. Because technically she doesn't have that kind of control over her life to like make that decision. Unless if it's a person that they say she can marry who's also involved in the conservatorship. This guy, it was Jason Trawick is the person's name. But then they broke up and he was kicked out of the conservatorship. So we'll talk about that at some point as well.
It should be noted that Paris Hilton's new voice is wild to hear. If your last touch point was the show with Nicole Richie, which it is, kind of like that's hot to her voice was so different. It was so different that I texted Tiffany as I was watching. I was like, is that what Paris Hilton sounds like? Because I haven't touched down on her in a minute. So that was jarring. So essentially it ends with the bank gets put onto the conservatorship, correct?
So that's what happened literally this week.
Okay.
So essentially all that was covered because everybody knew that a court date was coming up and everybody was like super excited, but everything that was taken care of was they addressed Jamie's objections to Bessemer Bank being added to the conservatorship because Jamie obviously had objections. But basically the judge ruled that both Bessemer and Jamie will have equal powers. So both sides will be working on an investment plan together as far as like how to further deal with her wealth. Furthermore, there have been other court dates established for this year. So on March 17th, they're going to talk about Britney's former business manager, Lou Taylor, who is in the hot seat for charging excessive personal fees to Britney's estate. So, interesting times. And then slowly through Dumois, whatever. They've gotten a lot of tips here and there. So since the doc, Britney's handlers have been on high alert, more security watching her every move. She hasn't been allowed to go out for walks, which is something that famously happens because a lot of people will come across her on trails and stuff. Or someone asked her for directions like not that long ago. And like Britney was like out on the trail in her high mom socks with her mask on. Like just walking around because Britney loves nature. Like she loves to be outside. She's a fitness queen. She famously loves to work out. She always has. Again, physical movement. But I guess like they won't even let her do that because they're worried that like someone is going to get to her and she's going to comment publicly on stuff. So then technically recently she did come out and make an Instagram post. So I'm going to pull that up because I didn't copy and paste it into my document. So she also just posted herself walking around. But one of the things that was posted, this was 4 days ago, it was a performance of Toxic. I I think this was from when it was showed for like New Year's Eve the one year, like maybe 2016, 2017 for the residency. The quote is, "Can't believe this performance of Toxic is from 3 years ago. I'll always love being on stage, but I'm taking the time to learn to be a normal person. I love simply enjoying the basics of everyday life. Each person has their story and their take on other people's stories. We all have so many different, beautiful, bright lives. Remember, no matter what we think we know about a person's life, it is nothing compared to the actual person living behind the lens." And there are emojis rife through this. But there is some question as to whether she posted that or not. Because the other thing is like it's attached to a performance video. And that's not really what Britney does.
No, she doesn't really. She
also posted a video literally the day after the Super Bowl and was like,
everyone's
been waiting for this. The Super Bowl was last week. And a lot of people were like, is that what everybody was waiting for, bitch? Because I think other people were also waiting for this. Like, girl, for real? And, like, people are now, like, really digging deep into her Instagram and, like, finding a lot of meaning and perhaps things that don't necessarily have meaning, or maybe they do. Hard to say.
Right.
It's really easy to get very conspiracy brain about this.
For sure.
So another conspiracy is, at the end of the documentary, one of the clips that they show is from Britney's Instagram. She's sitting in a bathtub and she has a rose in her hand and she's like talking about how it's a flower, it's a rose, it's so pretty. But then she gets it wet and she goes, it's just soap. It's just soap. And it kind of like dissolves in her hand. Through the documentary, all the people being interviewed are sitting in front of what almost looks like a backdrop that is supposed to mimic the look of a hedge that has roses in it. Over the summer and through like the pandemic, the quarantine period specifically, Britney kept talking about her Touch of Rose project.
Oh.
And it was never really said like what that even was. She would just post photos with like her with like a rose flower crown with the emoji rose, like wearing a red top and saying like a part of the Touch of Rose project. So now people are wondering if she knew about the doc, but could not comment on it.
Who knows? Only Britney knows.
I fucking don't know. I definitely don't know.
Only Britney knows.
So that's where we're at.
That's where we're
until March 17th.
Interesting.
Unless if something else goes down in the meantime.
Yeah. What a wild time.
And this is like just like
a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Your earlier comment, like I hope, like I don't want anything bad to happen to Britney, obviously, but there definitely is like a weird like feeling with all this. I mean, obviously none of it feels good, but like it definitely does feel like harkens back, like what I can imagine what was going on with Princess Diana at the time. It feels like that energy, which is like obviously that did not end well. So
I feel hopeful though.
Well, I feel
like this is the furthest. This is the most progress that's been made in a long time, because there have been once or twice over the length of the duration of the fucking whole conservatorship where Britney did make an attempt to try to get out, and it was immediately thwarted. Now she's gaining little victories.
Like it seems to be heard more
incrementally.
Yeah.
And like the ACLU posted about this recently.
Wow.
Because there is larger implications about the rights of people that are considered quote unquote disabled in this country and what access they lose to their own liberties.
Right.
And again, it makes sense for someone who's like truly ill and indisposed and can't speak for themselves, or like a power of attorney situation. Makes total sense.
But in how many of these other situations, like I don't know, is there this much on the line? Because like as the conservative, right? Is that the right term?
Yes.
Britney there's so much more money. Like I would imagine
she's
than like the
she's
normal
a literal
person.
economy.
Okay, yeah.
There's enough people that get paid from Britney Spears existing. It's a micro economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Britney's family, her sons, Kevin Federline, who has never really come out and said one thing or another about the conservatorship, just that he trusts the courts to do the right thing. But he also gets paid from the conservatorship. But like all of Britney's handlers, the people that come in and out of Britney's realm and provide services for her, who provide services for her father's legal fees, his representation, etc., are all on Britney's bankroll. Whenever her residency was happening, it was even more fucking people.
Right, because then it's like everyone involved.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously there's revenue coming in too to counterbalance that, none of which she has access to. She had a fucking allowance. That's what she had. An allowance.
Well, this is just the beginning of a long Britney series, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then we still have Kate Bush that will be intermixed. And then we have the Marina bracket. And then we also have our Patreon-only podcast called Recollect, which we drop weekly. There's a new episode in the free feed now, so if you want to check out more content from us.
Try before you buy.
A lot less heavy than this was. I don't think any of our other content has been this heavy in a minute.
Not in a long fucking time.
But it's like it harkens back to feelings whenever we had to do deep dives on things on Drag Race, where I'm just like, it's just like a lot's happening.
There is an emotional labor.
So that's that, I guess.
Free Britney.
Free Britney.